right. Well, good evening, everybody, again. Let's see. Don't have a handout. We're, I'm gonna tease some things out first, and then we'll get into Genesis. But tonight we're gonna be discussing, kind of the differences between sin and not just the counterpart, righteousness, but almost like what's the difference between sin and true wickedness, or what's the difference between, because we will say things like, well, sin is missing the mark. Okay, well, what if we miss the mark? Is that true lawlessness and wickedness? What does it mean how do we see the difference between one act of sin or true decision to rebel? So to do that, I want to go over some what we preached through, or what I preached through before we got into Colossians. And it's one of those things, like, I think Punk said it well, like no one gets more out of the teaching than the teacher, right? You're a teacher, so when I finish a sermon, it has like what's the financial term? Like a residual investment, what's compounding interest? Like it's like when I finish a sermon series, I'm not looking at the trees. I see the forest when I'm out of it, and then I constantly go back to it, like, oh, that was it. So I'm just going to run through a few passages in 1 John. If we say, and so as a group exercise, we're looking for the difference between not just a sin. What does it mean to commit a sin? What we're looking for is a person who is in the middle of complete rebellion, lawlessness, and wickedness. Okay? And that's also not to trivialize one sin, but we'll see a kind of a bigger picture. All right? So John says in the first chapter, if we say we have fellowship with him and yet we walk in darkness, we are lying and not practicing the truth. So there's some key words in there for us to look at. If we say we have fellowship with him and yet we walk in darkness, we are lying and not practicing the truth. All right. Then in chapter 3, he gets a little more specific. Everyone who commits sin practices lawlessness. And sin is lawlessness, or maybe in John's more Hebraic terminology, he might say everyone who commits sin practices Torahlessness, and sin is being without Torah. You know that he was revealed, Jesus, so that he might take away sins, and there is no sin in him. Everyone who remains in him does not sin. Everyone who sins has not seen him or known him. So I think in our ways, the way we look at sin, sometimes it can be like that seems like a contradiction. Okay, so I'm just kind of teasing this out in your mind. So let's go to another one. And I think this one has 2 or 3 slides. Little children, let no one deceive you. The one who does what is right is righteous, just as he is righteous. The one who commits sin is of the devil, for the devil has sinned from the beginning. The Son of God was revealed for this purpose, to destroy the devil's works. Everyone who has been born of God does not sin, because his seed remains in him. He is not able to sin, because he has been born of God. This is how God's children and the devil's children become obvious. Whoever does not do what is right is not of God, especially the one who does not love his brother or sister. For this is the message you have heard from the beginning. We should love one another, unlike Cain, who was of the evil one and murdered his brother. And why did he murder him? Because his deeds were evil and his brothers were righteous. So how would you then describe in in John's writing, and a lot of other, I think Romans 1 and 2, Paul will speak about this, and especially when he'll speak about Pharaoh. What's the difference between just like making a mistake, or even succumbing to temptation and committing a sin, and what's the difference between some of these words, going back to the top, commits sin and practicing lawlessness? There seems to be a difference between just what we have, just like, oopsie daisy, I made a mistake, to practicing lawlessness. And then down here, like committing sin, commits to sin, being of the devil. Yeah. What's the difference? Okay, well, that's, yeah, you went straight to the right answer. Now, so yeah, what's some synonyms to intent? Because that's actually a fantastic word. What's your intent? What do you intent? Your purpose, your goal.
Yeah.
What do you want to do?
I mean, obviously, one is like the way you're putting it is one person is kind of, they said succumbs or slips up.
Yeah.
And the other one's like, ooh.
Yeah. Right. Well, yeah.
Let's go do this.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there seems to be a couple of categories in John's writing that we don't really think about a lot. But Paul and John and a lot of other writers in scriptures, they do. We might be more familiar with the term hardening of hearts, right? And so again, I'm not diminishing the one singular act of sin, because what could that then lead to? A hardness of heart. But so I'm not trying to make it out to be a game where God's like, okay, I don't care if you do a couple little things. No, but I think I'm trying to lift our eyes to see the end game. We should be wary and on guard against the little sins, because they lead to a like this
Snowballing effect.
Yeah, a snowballing effect. But what we're getting into today, and there's a Judy. Hey, Judy. So yeah, for Judy, we're just we've been dissecting the difference between a sin or messing up, and I'm not trivializing a singular act of sin or things like that, but we're talking big picture. What's the difference between sin and lawlessness? What's the difference between committing a sin and going to the extreme of wickedness? And then at the end of this passage, John says, it's almost like he's been building up to this, and then he's going to apply a lot of the rest of it. But he brings up Cain and Abel. We should love one another, unlike Cain, who was of the evil one. So not only is it that wickedness and like true lawlessness, rebelliousness, and we kind of think of like the Pharaohs, like, well, whose fault was it? Did Pharaoh harden his heart, or did God harden his heart? Well, it was, God knew that Pharaoh was going to harden his heart. And so it could be attributed to God, but it was Pharaoh who just would not give in. And then finally, what does God do? Okay, you can get what you want for it. It ain't going to be good for you, but if you want it, eventually I'm just going to say, here you go. And that's kind of the same thing Paul says in Romans, I think at the end of 1, and explains more in the early chapter of 2. But he's like, even though they know, they have evidence, Paul says they are without excuse. But eventually he gave them over to their own desires. And so that's why one sin is so dangerous, because if you really choose it and keep choosing it, eventually you're going to harden your heart. You're going to desensitize your own soul to complete lawlessness, wickedness, and rebelliousness. Does that make sense, everybody? Because Well, going back to what we covered last week, what did God tell Cain? He said, sin is crouching at your door. Its desire is for you, but you must rule over it. Right? So we're dealing with things that aren't just, you know, I hit my thumb with a hammer and I said, oh, you know, it's not, but what does it lead to? You know, like what's around the bend? What's around the corner? Yeah. So, let's see, how much time do we have tonight? What we're going to get into tonight, I can't remember where my slides are. Yeah. We're looking at Cain and Abel, and I think 1 John was a good kind of, both for explanation, but also why does he go then to Cain and Abel? So we're going to pick up, oh, I'm sorry, Lou. I think it's good. It should already give it. Yeah, right. Well, I lost the chat. Where'd it go? Lou says, I think, or maybe it's Kate. I think it's a condition of the heart to begin with. It's lawless to commit murder, and it's also a sin that gets. Yeah, yeah, it is. For sure, it's a condition of the heart. But what we're getting into tonight is kind of not just the humanness of it, and not just the different lines of family, but who've been the players so far in Genesis 1 through 3 and getting into 4? Is it just Adam and Eve and God? No. So there's other things. John also says the whole world is under the sway of the evil one. So it doesn't mean that every sin that we commit is because a demon was prodding us like cattle, but there's, I mean, just think about today. If how much information do we really want to? Yeah. Well, Judy said, "Isn't the devil present also?" Yep. How much? If you wanted to know about why the price of gas is rising, and you turn to 4 different news channels. You know, I know it's a goofy, you know, analogy or example, but how much can you believe any of them, and do you trust any of them completely, right? So it's a lot of different information out there. Well, so with how to live life, do we ever kind of take the same thought and go, am I really vetting where I'm getting my information how to live?
Isn't the key word practice?
Yes.
I'm practicing,
Yes.
right? I mean, I'm
Yes.
conscious of the fact, and I'm also conscious of the fact that I'm practicing
Yes.
self-indulgence, will,
Sure.
etc. I am conscious of it, and so
Yeah.
he says practicing. If you're in the
Walking,
habit of practicing
fellowship.
righteousness, or
Yes.
if you're in the habit of practicing
Habit.
deceptiveness and what can I get away with?
Sure. Yep. Yeah. So now we're actually going to see a lot of these things, not just in like introspection, but we're going to see them in 2 very different, distinct lines of people, Cain and Seth. So how about I'm going to read Genesis 4, 17 through chapter 5, and if y'all want to follow along. Yeah, I'll just read Genesis 4:17 through chapter 5. So Cain was intimate with his wife, and she conceived and gave birth to Enoch. Then Cain became the builder of a city, and he named the city Enoch after his son. Arad was born to Enoch. Arad fathered the Hebrew. Cassie knows what I'm talking about. When I lived in Mexico, sometimes we would say half English and half Spanish words because we were trying to learn both. Well, I'm learning Hebrew, so now I say things in half English and half Hebrew. I've got one foot in both cultures. Mahujael, and Mahujael fathered Methuselah, and so I think in Hebrew it'd be like Metushael, fathered Lamech. Lamech took two wives for himself, one named Adah and the other named Zillah. Adah bore Yabal. He was the father of the nomadic herdsman. His brother was named Ubal. He was the father of all who played the lyre and the flute. Zillah bore Tubal-Cain, who made all kinds of bronze and iron tools. Tubal-Cain's sister was named Naamah. Lamech said to his wives, Adah and Zillah, hear my voice. Wives of Lamech, pay attention to my words. For I killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. If Cain is to be avenged 7 times over, then for Lamech it will be 77 times. Adam was intimate with his wife again, and she gave birth to a son and named him Seth. For she said, God has given me another child in place of Abel, since Cain killed him. A son was born to Seth also, and he named him Enosh. At that time people began to call on the name of the Lord. And this is the document containing the family records of Adam. On the day that God created man, he made him in the likeness of God. He created them male and female. When they were created, he blessed them and called them mankind. Adam was 130 years old when he fathered a son in his likeness, according to his image, and named him Seth. Adam lived 800 years after he fathered Seth, and he fathered other sons and daughters. So Adam's life lasted 930 years, then he died. Seth was 105 years old when he fathered Enosh. Seth lived 807 years after he fathered Enosh, and he fathered other sons and daughters. So Seth's life lasted 912 years, then he died. Enosh was 90 years old when he fathered Kenan. Enosh lived 815 years after he fathered Kenan, and he fathered other sons and daughters. So Enosh's life lasted 905 years, then he died. Kenan was 70 years old when he fathered Mahalalel. Canaan lived 840 years after he fathered Mahalalel, and he fathered other sons and daughters, so Kenan's life lasted 910 years, then he died. Mahalalel was 65 years old when he fathered Jared, or Yared. Mahalalel lived 830 years after he fathered Jared, and he fathered other sons and daughters, so Mahalalel's life lasted 895 years, then he died. Yared was 162 years old when he fathered Enoch. Yared lived 800 years after he fathered Enoch, and he fathered other sons and daughters. So Yared's life lasted 962 years. Then he died. Enoch was 65 years old when he fathered Methuselah. And after he fathered Methuselah, Enoch walked with God 300 years, and he fathered other sons and daughters. So Enoch's life lasted 365 years. Enoch walked with God. Then he was not there because God took him. Methuselah was 807 years old when he fathered Lamech. Methuselah lived 782 years after he fathered Lamech, and he fathered other sons and daughters. So Methuselah's life lasted 969 years, then he died. Lamech was 182 years old when he fathered a son, and he named him Noah, saying, this one will bring us relief from the agonizing labor of our hands caused by the ground the Lord has cursed. Lamech lived 595 years after he fathered Noah, and he fathered other sons and daughters. So Lamech's life lasted 777 years, then he died. Noah was 500 years old, and he fathered Shem, Ham, and Japheth. All right, so we're going to do a 3-hour lecture. No, I wanted to read that almost in our own study of a lot of what we've been doing, going back to the first few weeks and months of this, was just almost like a training and observation of how different our culture is than the culture that produced the Bible. I'm not saying God produced it, it's divine, but it was captured in their culture. And we began with 1 John, how any sin can lead to a life of intent and a bent towards rebellion, wickedness, evil, lawlessness. And it's based on what we choose to practice, or walk, or make habit of, and what we just desire. What do we really want? So let's look at this what actually get really fun really fast. Because like I said, a lot of kind of part B of chapter 4 and chapter 5 to us just seems like census. It just seems like social work or something. It's court records, you know. But there's actually a lot of poetry here and some meanings that tell a story. All right. But first, let's just kind of hone in what describes the line of Cain. So look at Genesis 4, 17 through 26, the end of chapter 4. What would you say are some of the things that describe Cain's line? It says Cain was enemies with his wife. There's Enoch, Arad, Mahujael, Methuselah, and Lamech. And then Lamech, what is he? Just even without getting into the weeds right now about their description of their life, but just look at maybe verse 23, Lamech's song. What does that sound like to you? If you were describing this man in the words of his song, what he chooses to write about, what does that tell you about him?
He's a murderer.
Okay, so murderer, and
He's proud of it.
and he's proud of it. So why would a guy murder someone? What are just some of the common motives?
He looked at me funny.
Okay, yeah. Anger.
Jealousy.
Judy says ego, good one. Yeah, a lot of it's ego. Ego, jealousy,
Controller.
yeah.
This guy embarrassed him. Did he hurt him physically or hurt him emotionally?
Yeah.
So if he hurt him physically, it's self-defense, therefore not murder.
Yeah, there you go.
If he hurt
I'll
him
take that.
emotionally, then he's just paying him back for making a fool of him.
Yeah.
That's murder.
Yeah.
You're supposed to turn the other cheek unless you're
Yeah.
saving your own life.
Yeah. So, but then there's pride and there's self-justification, there's vengeance. You know, a lot of these things that just kind of produce a lot of,
Rage.
yeah.
Just your emotions get away from you.
Well, I mean, what does it tell you about who he's writing the song to? Who's he writing the song to? Who's he singing to?
His two wives.
His two wives. So what does that tell you? Not even
He's crazy.
he's a glutton for punishment. Huh? He's picking fights and marrying two wives.
No wonder he's going around killing people.
But the model was already set. Adam and Eve were out of one and they were joined to be one. And then it doesn't take just a couple generations down. Guys like, you know what? I'm greedy. I want two. So anyway, yeah, you start seeing how this really it escalates pretty quickly, huh? All right. Now let's look at what describes the line of Seth.
Well, I find it interesting that Cain's line, the words used are like either what they did as a profession, which even the building and the
Yeah.
herdsmen and all that. But Seth's line, it's like they were being fruitful and multiplying. It's focused on like
So
the fruitfulness, the children,
is
you
that,
know?
is that why they built the
I don't know.
city, so they could fill it up?
Hey, maybe.
It also mentions
The
that
city is significant,
The city
I
is
think so
significant.
too, I just,
Yeah.
doing exactly what God told them not to do.
Yep. Yep. Well, to me, some of the contrast here, yeah. So Jude says, "Line of Seth is blessed." Yeah, because Adam, it says Adam was intimate with his wife again. She gave birth to a son, named him Seth, for she said, God has given me another child in place of Abel, since Cain killed him. And a son was born to Seth also, and he named him Enosh. At that time, people began to call on the name of the Lord. And then it kind of reaffirms that creation mandate. He created them male and female. When they were created, he blessed them and called them mankind. So, but like Lamech gets a lot of, just for a short passage, he gets some ink. Like he gets his song recorded, his the generations before him. There is a lot to the city. There is a lot to what they're doing, but it's more descriptive about the line of Cain. So what's really the only thing that the line of Seth does to be called good? There's more to it, but just simply in our passage that we read, what's the only thing that they're doing that you go, hey, yeah, good job for y'all, good on you.
Being fruitful and multiplying.
Well, before then, because it's really kind of a callback to just creation. That says he created them male and female. When they were created, he blessed them and called them mankind. So what's the only thing Seth is really, or the line of Seth is doing that you're like, oh, good, that's good for y'all.
That descriptor's in verse 26.
Yeah.
It says, and to Seth, to him also a son was born, and he called his name Enosh. Then men began to call upon the name of the Lord.
Yeah.
That is his descriptor.
So I'm not.
Just
I'm
because
not-
he named the kid Enosh?
No. Yeah, well,
Dude, if you're gonna do that, we're gonna look to the Lord.
yeah, he could call him what's the Johnny Cash song? Sue. He could have called him Sue. Yeah.
I don't know.
No, at that time, people began to do what? Call on the name of the Lord. Yeah.
But it's just coincidence that that's the time Seth was having a voice.
Yeah, just once. Yeah, that's it.
There's no coincidence in the Bible, is that what you're telling me?
Yeah. So, but even right there, you get both sides. The wickedness is demonstrated and documented and described, and the line of Seth. Why are they calling on the name of the Lord? I think some of it they're witnessing a lot of this, and they're like, we don't. Maybe they're saying, I don't know everything God wants me to do, but I know I need to call on Him. And if the line of Cain hadn't been so like literally hell bent, could they not have called on the name of the Lord too? What was keeping them from doing that? So anyway, we're gonna spend just a few minutes looking at these two things. I know this will not be new to Punk, but this would really be more. This is not coincidence. This is not the human field of is this a sin or is this lawlessness? This is God in eternity past, knowing everything that was going to happen and leaving us a little breadcrumb. Yeah. So let's look at, but there is a humanness in the kind of artistry of the names and how they use poetry. There's some great stuff in to examine in the song and things like that. But if you just look at Genesis 4 Part B, the second half of Genesis 4, and Genesis 5 as almost like two songs or two opposing family trees, look at what God wants us to see and how the Hebrews were writing this. Okay, so on the left column we have a name. On the right we have the meaning of the name from the Hebrew. So let's look at the line of Cain. Cain means to acquire. And so really one of the best ways to look at this is almost like maybe I don't want to say worldly, but because that's not high enough, but maybe like a world system. This is how John says the whole world is under the sway of the evil one. And what we're seeing between these is like Seth is calling upon the name Lord. He is good. He is righteous. And really the only proof that we have is that he called on the name Lord. So it's not propping up Seth as, the first Messiah type of deal. It's just he called on the name Lord. So Seth is of God and Cain is of the world. Seth is good and Cain is bad. Seth is righteous. Cain's line is wicked. And so what you see through here is kind of like the system of the world and the system of the world, the system of the ruler behind the world. So Cain means acquire. Enoch means appointed or dedicated to activity. And you start kind of seeing how these meanings aren't as simple as they make out. Think about the system of the world and the system of the ruler behind the world when you think about these meanings on the right. Then you have Arad. His name is wild donkey. And that's not just like petting zoo.
We have another term for that.
Yeah. And I was thinking about that today. I was like, I've heard that term in the Bible before. Where is it? And it's Ishmael, right? You and your line will be a wild donkey. Yeah. So what does a wild donkey kind of represent? A stubborn rebelliousness, right? And always seeking a freedom away from, So then you got Mahujael, and his name means blotted out by God. And then you got Metushael, name means seeking death. And then you have Lamech, and I have copies of this if y'all don't want to write all these things down. I just didn't.
Committed.
Okay.
I'm already committed.
I just didn't want to send it out by email, and then y'all wouldn't show up tonight. And then you have Lamech, destroyer, stuck, reduced. There's I've seen some disagreements, but it's fairly negative no matter how you slice it. What's this thing keep? All right, and then you get into some of that. What would you call it? Industry. And Yabal, he was a breeder, a cattle producer. Yubal was in production, music and artistry. But again, don't think like simple ranching and, being artistic. But this one's in Tubal Cain. Why would someone be a metal worker at this time? What did they learn from Lamech?
How to kill.
Yeah.
Warcraft.
Yeah.
But those things on their face value, none of those are bad.
No, well, that's what I was saying. It's maybe we should take another swing at it next week. Actually, hold off until a couple weeks. We'll see the full brunt of this in Genesis basically at Babel. What this is getting to. But think about it from the most worldly sense of it. Why would someone want to be a cattle breeder? Why would someone? What would be the inspiration? What was the first song written? It was by Lamech. And then what was the motivation behind metalworking at that time? There's a lot behind the scenes, so you're like, what's the problem with But I don't think they were landscape painting. You know what I mean? So you get the idea behind the family of Cain. Well, it's about to start getting really good with the line of Seth, and I stole this from Punk.
I didn't create it.
Well, he was the first one I saw it from. So what does Adam mean? Man. And then you have Seth. What does Seth mean? Appointed. So whereas the line of Cain, you see the scriptures and you can see it escalating and you can make sense of the message, this one gets more and more clear. With Enosh or Enosh, what does his name mean? Subject to death. With Canaan or Canaan, his name means sorrowful, or despairing, right? With Mahalalel, his name means from the praise of God. With Jared, and just as a Hebrew, how I make sense of it, just like we would say John in Mexico, it's Juan. There's no hard J in Hebrew, so if I go back and forth, one time I say Jared, the other one I say Yared, the J is a Y sound in Hebrew as well. So Jared, his name means one descends. And Enoch, after him, means learning obedience. Methuselah means dying he shall send. Lamech, to the poor or the lowly. And then who comes after Lamech? Noah. So if you take the meanings on the right and then read them out loud. So, Cassie, read the meanings out loud.
Man, appointed, subject to death, sorrowful, from the praise of God, one descends, learning obedience. Dying he shall send to the poor, lowly, rest.
What does that sound like to you?
Jesus.
And so you have,
So you can break it all down into 2 words.
the Genesis 5, basically. Yeah.
Mhm.
Or 2 columns, yeah.
So Cain is selfishness and Seth is service.
Yeah, well, and the way, yeah, and I like that sort of nutshell thing of it. But what I was kind of lingering at, or
I have a nutshell for a brain, I have to do things that.
what John was kind of alluding to is the who's working behind this,
Yeah.
right? So he would say like, are you? And he'll use Genesis 5. Well, Genesis 1 through 5 language, literally, John was saying things like seed, and not just children, but seed. And what's the context here? The seed of Satan, it was John's context, or being a child of the devil, right? And he uses that same term in Genesis 3 and Genesis 4 and 5. It's like our actions, because based on what we believe or what is our intent, tell us what spiritual lineage we are in. And it's not, well, if I make a mistake, if I slip up and sin, does that mean I'm in the line of Satan? No. But what do you want? What is your desire? What is your intent? Now, we want to be guarded. Well, no one's saying, yeah, a little sin's okay. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but we're never going to be perfect. But what is our motives? And then do we call on the name of the Lord? What is our practice? What is our habits? But big picture, what I was showing you is that we're going to go way back up here. With Cain, their desires was only worldly, acquiring, dedicated to work, rebelling, seeking death and destruction. And that's the context which produce or artistry or metalworking was about. They have, it's just pure wickedness. And this isn't very late into the humanity game. We're just a couple generations down the road. But the point, or not the point, the almost like poetic prophecy hidden in a genealogy that because we don't speak the language, we don't even write the same way that they would.
Which makes it all the more, how did they not get it when he was born and he came and
Well,
how did they not get it?
so I've
It's
actually
right
been
there.
I've been reading with sort of like fresh eyes with the Gospels and Acts. I think we look back and go, well, they all missed it, but really the Gospels and Acts, the book of Acts, are actually showing us the opposite. Sure, there were some, particularly the higher ups. They were a lot of them were entrenched in their, but constantly in the Gospels, it is the Jews who are becoming believers in Jesus, that they're accepting this is the Messiah. And then like even in midway and into Acts, the late teens, it's like, and many priests became part of the way, you know. So the movement was largely messianic to begin with, and then a couple hundred years later, it was dominantly Gentile. But you know, for the first couple, and then think about it, Israel has never been the most populous nation, even though I'm hearing good reports about their ascent in population. But it's like God's always used Israel because they have never been the most dominant. He took them out of the most dominant nation in the world, Egypt at the time. But it wasn't because of them, it was because of him. And so then you don't, even in the time of Jesus, his life, his death on the cross, his burial, resurrection, they were still, what was the best term, occupied people, and small in number at that. So it wouldn't take very long for the non-Hebrews or non-Israel to absorb the faith, to come into the faith, and at least population-wise take over. So we kind of have, I think we have a skewed look of history just because time and numbers. But it's hard to determine what was the ratio, because and I don't even want to guess. Like, was it 5%, 50%? Like, I don't know. But the proof is the first believers in Jesus were Jewish. A lot of the believers into Acts were Jewish, and even Paul, his mission was to first go to the synagogue and then go to the Gentiles. And if they weren't at least having good conversations, and sometimes it turned, violent, but I don't think
because those guys are in Canaan and not saved.
Sure, yeah. So anyway, it's tough to like get the concept of how small the people historically they've been, but also like why do they put a bird in everybody's call type of thing. Like no other nation has talked about like it. Like what's a relative size of geography and population to Israel? Like there has to be hundreds of countries in South America and Europe and Africa that are similar in geography or population, and no one says a thing, right? But why Israel? It's spiritual and perplexing.
Yeah, they made Satan jealous.
Yeah.
Yeah. God made Satan jealous.
Sure.
When he chose them.
Yeah.
And so they're going to suffer for it until the end of time.
Yeah. But so anyway, long answer of, I think a lot of them did. I think a lot of them, but then on the other hand, to be fair, you can talk to, I know there's a lot of conversations with Orthodox Jews today, and they don't want to hear none of it. Yeah. But there's this, all because from the human point of view, people began calling out on the name of the Lord. And so it's like, did they know that they were kind of putting this sort of prophetic meaning through names together? I doubt it. I'm just kind of skeptical of that. But what was God doing even
Was God's spirit
in
in the
Genesis
background saying,
5, yes.
name this kid that.
Yeah,
name this kid
yeah, and that if you line these genealogies together like this, you can clearly go, there's a man appointed to death who's sorrowful, but from the praise of God he descends to learn obedience, and dying he was sent to the poor and lowly to give us rest. And so then to come full circle, we ended last week with, and I think in Hebrew it's nod, or how we say nod. Nod is where Cain was sent to wander in restlessness. And then on the line of Seth, we come to Noah, whose name means rest, and Jesus is sort of in typology, the greater Noah. I think in Matthew 11 he says, come to me all who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. Right? So he's the greater Noah, the one who really gives us rest, who takes us out of node or nod, wandering and restlessness. And really, what is, we may have said this last time, what is the true rest? It's calling on the name Lord and being in the presence of God. And even in Genesis 5, he's telling us the plan that he had before any of this happened, that this is what was going to happen, that he was going to send his son. So anyway, hopefully for Genesis 4 and 5, that tends to get overlooked a lot. Maybe you'll have something to kind of, so Lou and Kay said, even Seth's line must have had some bad and evil in it, as God destroyed everyone but Noah and his sons and their families. Sure. Well, and yeah, Lou and Kay are right. I would even take it a little further. We assume that, and we'll get into that in Genesis 6 and 7 and 8, but we assume that all of Noah's families were on the ark. But I bet he had a bunch of other children who weren't on the ark. I mean, how many times in Genesis 5 it said, and this guy had this son, but he had a bunch of other sons and daughters. We're not told everybody's name. And so we assume Noah probably had these boys and a bunch of other sons and daughters.
He lived long enough to.
Sure, exactly, yeah.
A lot of families today, some
Sure.
children get saved and receive Christ and some don't.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah. Well, and so and we will as we progress through Genesis and throughout. That's why I don't like to, whether it's your own family or Israel and us here in the Western, literally like southern New Mexico, like it's not about, nor even in Genesis 4 and 5 has it ever been about bloodline, right? Like they have the same parents, and when we get into like Isaac and Ishmael and Jacob and Esau, and it's not about who your parents are. It's, are you going to call out on the name of the Lord? And then when you receive God's presence, are you going to do what he asked you to do? Do you want, and when you mess up, are you going to call on the name of the Lord and repent and come back home a little bit? Are you going to stop wandering and come back? Yeah. Yeah, and Paul uses kind of the typology of sons in Romans a lot. That it's not, and that he'll even use that, like beginning with Abraham. Like, who was Abraham? He wasn't a Hebrew. Like, he didn't deserve any of it. His dad was an idol maker. You know, it's not about family lines. It's about, are you going to call the name Lord? And are you going to, you know, when you're in His presence, are you going to stay there? Not because you're, again, Seth, what did they do? They didn't earn it. They called on the name Lord. Any question? Any thought? You working on something?
No, I mean, I just keep thinking back to your original question, the difference between
Yeah.
sin and true wickedness. And then even in Cain's name descriptions, they were dedicated.
Yeah.
It was like a dedication to worldly gain and to evil. So everything was just producing, those words, produce, production, dedication, appointed, you know. So we're all going to fall short of the glory of God.
Yeah.
But where are you taking up residence?
Yeah.
Where are you dwelling? And then on the flip side, what are you allowing to take up residence in you?
Yeah. Which,
And then from that, your life will produce either light or
Yeah.
darkness.
right.
So if you're just a machine factory of sin and lawlessness and destruction and death, that's being someone of true wickedness
Right.
who's rejected God. But if you are calling on the name of the Lord, and then you fall short of His glory and you repent and you stay on that path, then that's sin.
Yeah.
That's, you missed the mark,
Yeah.
you missed the target,
And
but
none
you're
of us-
not
none of us are
dwelling
perfect.
in darkness.
Yeah.
You're not staying
Yeah.
there.
And I can't help but, I know it's not like the main thing, but we had a really good discussion one night on the Sabbath. And I wasn't like trying to institute, like trying to reverse 2,000 years of culture or whatever. But the point is, what was Cain? He was a restless wanderer. His line, you said, were all about production for their own good gain. They wanted the world. They were like, what was Jack Sparrow say in Pirates Caribbean? Take what you can, give nothing back. Type, you know, like that's what they were about. But what is the line of Seth? Like, at the end of it, it's about Noah, the true rest of the Lord.
Yeah.
So it's that, what are we living for? Going back to intent. Yeah, so anyway, I'm done. What?
So, and this is all just gonna lead to Saul and David. Saul's a Cain and David's a Seth.
There's more, there's a lot,
Spoiler alert.
So
yeah,
how old are we gonna be when this is over?
yeah. Hmm.
I do have a question.
Yeah,
In chapter 5, verse 3, it says, when Adam was 130 years old, he became the father of a son who was just like him in his very image. Does that matter at all? Is that one of those like odd things? Because isn't that saying that he made his son in Adam's image and not in God's image?
I think 5:1 kind of might explain that. On the day that God created man, He made him in the likeness of God. He created a male and female. I don't know.
This could be overly simplistic, and there may be some there. When I first read that, and this may come from like my manufacturing background, but I'm thinking of like reproduction and a production line. That's just kind of how my mind goes. But how did God make Adam? Did God make Adam a baby and then
Yeah.
cared for him until he was an adult, a man, and then make it? No, like God made Adam mature and in His image. Like, but when Adam is intimate with his wife and they have a baby, it's in their image that's in the image of God. But now it's about reproduction. It's about it is. Yeah, I don't want to.
Let me give you a thought
Go
on that
for it.
before you guys get off get off the rails too far. How many generations down from Adam is this?
It's his son.
One. Okay. It's just, and how did God create Adam? in his image. Okay, that doesn't mean he looked like him or
Right.
whatever, genetically the same or whatever. This is talking about being an imager, okay, a reflector, so God created humanity, the first Adam, as an imager, okay? And it says that then Adam had a son also created as an imager. It's pointing to the line of humanity being all the way down, whether it be Adam or Cain, or doesn't matter. God's purpose, his intent, is that they were created to be an imager.
Yeah,
They are Elohim
yeah,
in that sense.
yeah. And so the way I look at it, like once God made Adam, he let things happen as they were gonna happen, population, and God was out of the Adam making business. Like God, God didn't physically make any more Adams. He knew, like, that's how he designed it.
Thank you.
In that sense, when is a human being, when are they in the image of God? When are they made in the image of God? I mean, when they're born, or when they're 14, 14, 15, 16, you kind of wonder. No, from the get-go.
Amen.
I felt that.
Yeah.
We're in the 13, 15 range.
I got too many amens on that one.
Oh.
You're begging the Lord, please.
But conversely, not an image maker would be someone who's doesn't have the DNA that has,
Not in the human line.
not
Yeah.
in the human line. So
Yeah.
that's the explanation of Noah's.
Yeah.
So
But
they
it
were
does
not
not say
imagers.
that Cain was not in the human line. He
No.
was.
Yeah.
So far, we're still in the human line right there, and that's
Yeah.
what that descriptor is.
But
Next week.
next week
But something happened, yeah.
something happens. Kind of think of that Jurassic Park thing. They were so busy wondering if they could, they never asked if they should. No, they knew. They knew. So anyway,
Spring break if somebody's watching a lot of movies. Did nobody tell you that it's?
Miss
supposed
Lou
to-
have-
you're
or
supposed
Miss
to have a
Kay's got
t-shirt and
something.
Flip-flops on?
Hey, look, I have flip flops and a t-shirt, but just a light jacket over
A
it.
light jacket.
Yes, this is a light jacket.
Miss Kay, did you have something?
I just want to ask a question, I think all of these things that we're discussing and everything are kind of, how do I want to say this, not from the heart. That they are things that I look at anything or, oh my gosh, I can be ugly today just because I can. But God loved us so much that he puts up with that stuff and he gives us a choice. Either you accept me or you don't. And once we do accept him, that's when we try our hardest to be like he is. Not from all these other names that mean whatever it means, diddly squat. But because he's God, that's why we want to do the best that we can.
Yeah.
Not because what their name means or if there's a motive to it or something else, but just because he's our God and he gives us that choice. That is really true love.
Yeah. Unless you're like Cain. Yeah. Yep. All right, good word, Miss Kay.
Sorry, I didn't interrupt you.
No, you're always welcome. Well, anybody else have any thoughts, questions, anything?
Just be careful how long you play with sin is all I got to say.
All right, well then, I'm gonna close that here. Good night, everybody on the Zooms and the interwebs. Good night, Judy. Good night, everybody. And I'm gonna quit sharing and, well, we'll just end the
You were
meeting.
dying to ask her, weren't
See y'all
you?
later.
I thought our plan was tacos tonight. We did St. Pedro's for supper last night, because we didn't have any St. Patrick.
St. Pedro's.
We had fajitas.